The message arrived on a Tuesday. It came through every channel at once. Every television, every radio, every phone, every satellite uplink, every military frequency, every ham radio in every garage in every country on Earth. The signal did not ask permission. It did not negotiate a bandwidth. It simply overrode everything, the way a boot overrides an anthill. The face that appeared was not a face, exactly. It was a shape. A broad, flat thing like a plate of dark metal, with 4 eyes arranged in a square and a mouth that moved sideways instead of up and down. Behind it stood rows of identical shapes, perfectly still, perfectly silent. The voice that came out of the speakers was translated into every language simultaneously. Not dubbed. Not subtitled. Translated, in the way that meant the aliens understood every tongue on Earth and had chosen to speak all of them at once. Species designation, human. World designation, Earth. You are hereby issued a declaration of annihilation by the Koroth Dominion. Your world will be reduced. Your population will be processed. Your genetic material will be archived. You are granted 30 rotations of your planet to prepare. This is the courtesy of the Dominion. No further communication will follow. The fleet will arrive on the 30th day. The screen went dark. Every channel returned. And for about 11 seconds, the entire human race sat very still. In an apartment above a laundromat in Seoul, a woman named Yoon Seo-yeon stared at her phone. The screen showed her daughter's face, frozen mid-video call, mouth open, eyes wide. Seo-yeon was 53. She taught middle school mathematics. She had been grading papers when the broadcast interrupted. Red ink still stained her left thumb. "Mama," her daughter whispered. She was 19. She was in Busan, 400 kilometers south. "Mama, what was that?" Seo-yeon set down her red pen. She looked at the window. Outside, the street was full of people standing still, looking up at the sky as if something might fall from it. A man had stopped his car in the middle of the road and was just sitting there, engine running, doors closed. "I don't know," Seo-yeon said. And then, because she was a mother, and because that fact did not change just because the sky had spoken, "Stay inside. Lock the door. I'm coming to get you." "Mama," it said 30 days. It said. I heard what it said. "Lock the door." She hung up. She put on her shoes. She walked downstairs, past the laundromat, past the frozen people on the street, and she began walking south. She did not know how she would get to Busan. She did not know if trains were running. She did not know if the world still had trains, or roads, or anything that resembled a world. But she walked south, because her daughter was south, and that was the direction that mattered. In Geneva, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session 40 minutes after the broadcast. It was the fastest quorum in the organization's history. Every seat was filled. Every delegate was pale. The Secretary-General, a tall man from Ghana named Kwame Asante, stood at the podium. He looked at the assembled representatives of 193 nations. He looked at their faces. He saw fear. He saw anger. He saw the particular blankness of people who had not yet decided whether to believe what they had seen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I will not pretend to know what we face. I will not pretend to have a plan. But I will say this. We are not going to spend 30 days arguing about whether this is real. We are not going to spend 30 days debating jurisdiction. We are not going to spend 30 days pointing fingers. Whatever this is, whatever they are, they gave us 30 days. And I intend to use every single one. The Russian delegate raised his hand. And if this is a hoax? A provocation? Then we will have spent 30 days preparing for nothing, and we will feel foolish, and we will go home. I can live with foolish. I cannot live with unprepared. The Chinese delegate leaned forward. What do you propose? Asante looked at him. I propose we stop being 193 countries. Just for 30 days. I propose we become one species. That is all. One species, one planet, one deadline. Everything else can wait. The room was quiet for a long time. Then the American delegate stood. Then the Indian delegate. Then the Brazilian. Then the Nigerian. One by one, they stood. Not because they agreed. Not because the politics made sense. But because a plate-faced thing had looked into their cameras and told them they would be processed, and something very old and very human had woken up in the back of their skulls. They stood because they were afraid. And they stood because they were angry. And mostly, they stood because they refused. The first 3 days were chaos. Not the productive kind. The ugly kind. The kind that happens when 8 billion people learn they might die and do not know what to do with their hands. Stock markets crashed, then froze, then were shut down entirely. Money stopped meaning anything for about 48 hours. Grocery stores were emptied in hours. Not by panic, exactly. By calculation. People looked at their shelves and thought, 30 days, and they bought what they needed, and then they bought more, because they had children, and children needed more. There were riots. Not many. A few, in places where the social fabric was already thin. But they burned out fast, because the people in the streets looked up and realized that the person next to them was not the enemy. The enemy was 30 days away, in the dark, coming. There were prayers. Every church, every mosque, every temple, every synagogue filled to overflowing. People who had not prayed in years knelt down and said words they half remembered. They did not pray for salvation. Most of them prayed for time. For one more year. For their children to grow up. And there were the people who simply went to work. The nurses who showed up at hospitals. The power plant operators who kept the grids running. The farmers who went out to their fields because the crops did not care about alien armadas and would die if no one watered them. These people held the world together while everyone else fell apart. They did not do it for glory. They did it because someone had to, and they were there, and that was enough. On the third day, the arguing stopped. Not because the governments agreed. They didn't. The arguments about who would lead, who would command, who would control the military response, those arguments could have lasted a year. But on the third day, a woman in a shipyard in Hamburg walked up to her foreman and said, "I can weld. I can cut. I can read a blueprint. Tell me what to build and I will build it." And the foreman, a heavy man named Dietrich who had not slept in 2 days, looked at her. And he looked at the empty slipway behind him, where a container ship was supposed to be finished in 6 months. And he said, "We're not building a container ship. What are we building? I don't know yet. But it needs to fly. And it needs to be done in 27 days. The woman nodded. She picked up her welding torch. She went to work. And something shifted. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But in 1,000 places, in 1,000,000 small workshops and garages and factories and labs, People stopped asking why and started asking how. The arguing did not end. But it moved to the background, a low hum beneath the sound of hammers and torches and engines turning over for the first time. The 30-day clock was running. And humanity, finally, had decided what to do with it. On day 4, the world went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. There was a difference. Silent meant nothing happening. Quiet meant everyone was working, and working did not make much noise until you added it all up. The Koroth had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. They had studied Earth's governments. They had studied Earth's militaries. They had catalogued every aircraft carrier, every fighter jet, every nuclear warhead. They had built their invasion plan around the assumption that humanity would fight them the way every other conquered species had fought, with existing forces, existing doctrine, existing infrastructure. They had not studied the garages. They had not studied the machine shops in Detroit, the fabrication yards in Mumbai, the university engineering labs in Tokyo, the backyard workshops in rural Australia where men and women built aircraft from scrap because they enjoyed the puzzle of it. They had not studied the open-source engineering forums where teenagers shared designs for rocket engines because it was fun and no one had told them not to. They had not studied the fact that humanity had spent 10,000 years building things. That every human civilization in history had been, at its core, a building civilization. That the species that had looked at a river and said I will put a bridge there and then actually done it, with nothing but rope and stone and stubbornness, was not a species that would look at an alien invasion and say I guess we die now. On day 4, Kwame Asante made a second address. This one was shorter. The military commands of every nation are now operating under a unified structure. This was not easy. I will not pretend it was easy. But it is done. General Aisha Okonkwo of Nigeria will serve as Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. She has my full confidence and the full confidence of this body. He paused. But the military is not enough. We have 12 ships in orbit. 12. The Koroth Dominion has conquered 400 worlds. I do not know what their fleet looks like. I do not want to know. What I know is this: we have 26 days. And every person watching this broadcast has a choice. You can wait. You can hide. You can pray. And those are valid choices, and no one will judge you for them. Or you can build. You can make. You can fix. You can weld, and wire, and code, and haul, and lift. You can do the thing that humans have always done, which is look at an impossible problem and say, fine. I'll do it by Thursday. I am asking you to do it by Thursday. I am asking you to do it every Thursday between now and day 30. Thank you. He stepped away from the podium. General Okonkwo stepped up. She was a short woman, compact, with close-cropped gray hair and hands that looked like they had been carved from dark wood. She did not smile. I need engineers, she said. I need welders. I need programmers. I need miners. I need farmers, because armies eat. I need teachers, because someone has to keep the children calm. I need doctors. I need truck drivers. I need everyone who can hold a tool or drive a vehicle or write a line of code or carry a box. Report to your nearest municipal coordination center. Bring whatever you have. Bring your hands if you have nothing else. We will find something for your hands to do. She paused. They gave us 30 days. They think that is generous. I intend to make them regret their generosity. In a basement lab at the Indian Institute of Technology in Madras, a 26-year-old physicist named Arjun Venkatesh stared at a whiteboard covered in equations. His colleagues had gone home on day one. They had families. They had fear. Arjun understood. He had called his mother in Kerala and told her he loved her and that he was staying at the university. She had cried. He had cried. Then he had hung up and walked back to the lab. The problem was propulsion. Humanity had chemical rockets. Humanity had ion drives, barely functional, barely tested. What humanity did not have was anything that could cross the distance between Earth and the edge of the solar system in time to meet an incoming fleet, fight it, and come back. Arjun looked at the whiteboard. He looked at the numbers. The numbers said it was impossible. He picked up an eraser. He erased the numbers. He started over. The numbers said it was impossible with existing technology. Arjun was not interested in existing technology. He was interested in physics. And physics, unlike engineering, did not care about what was practical. Physics only cared about what was true. He worked for 19 hours straight. He drank cold coffee. He ate a protein bar that tasted like chalk. He did not sleep. And at 4 in the morning on day 5, he found something. Not a solution. Not yet. But a crack in the wall. A place where the physics bent just slightly, just enough, if you were willing to be very, very reckless. He picked up his phone. He called a number he had not dialed in 3 years. "Professor Mehta," he said. "I need your help. And I need you to not ask me why. Just come to the lab. Bring your notebooks. Bring the ones from the 90s. There was a long pause. Then an old voice, rough with sleep, said, "Arjun. What is happening? You will know when you turn on the news. But I need you here first. Please." Another pause. "I will be there in an hour." Arjun hung up. He looked at the whiteboard. He wrote, in large letters at the top, "Assumption, we do not need to be elegant. We need to be fast." Then he kept working. On day 6, the shipyards lit up. Every major port on Earth became a construction site. Not for ships that sailed on water. For ships that would sail on nothing. The transition was not clean. It was not organized. It was 1,000 separate decisions made by 1,000 separate people who looked at the dry docks and the gantry cranes and the welding bays and thought, "This is where we build things, and we are going to build something new." In Ulsan, South Korea, the world's largest shipyard pivoted from building oil tankers to building orbital frames. The engineers had never designed anything for vacuum. They learned in a day. They made mistakes. They welded seams that would never hold in a pressure differential, and then they tore them out and welded them again. They did not sleep. They ate rice and kimchi at their stations and kept welding. In Newcastle, England, a team of aerospace engineers commandeered a decommissioned aircraft carrier and began cutting it apart. Not to destroy it. To rebuild it. The flight deck became a whole plate. The reactor became a power core. The island superstructure became a command module. It was ugly. It was brutal. It was a flying brick with engines. But it would fly. In Houston, in Baikonur, in Jiuquan, in Kourou, the space agencies stopped being agencies and became factories. The clean rooms filled with people in jumpsuits instead of bunny suits. The precision gave way to speed. Tolerances loosened. Margins shrank. The engineers winced every time they signed off on a component that was slightly outside spec. But they signed off. Because the clock was running, and perfection was a luxury they could not afford. And in the garages, in the basements, in the workshops, the small work continued. A retired machinist in Ohio built valve assemblies for engines he would never see. A group of university students in Lagos wrote navigation software on laptops held together with tape. A woman in Sao Paulo organized a supply chain for rare earth metals using nothing but a phone, a spreadsheet, and a voice that could make mining executives do what she told them. No one was in charge of all of it. That was the thing the Koroth would never understand. There was no single mind directing the effort. No central plan. No grand architect. There were 8 billion small decisions, 8 billion pairs of hands, 8 billion people who woke up each morning and asked, "What can I do today?" and then did it. It was inefficient. It was redundant. It was maddening. It was also, in its own chaotic, furious, stubborn way, unstoppable. On day 7, the first hole was sealed. It was not a warship. It was a frame. A skeleton of steel and titanium and carbon composite, wrapped around a reactor that hummed like an angry hive. It sat in a dry dock in Rotterdam, open to the sky, and a crew of 400 welders, electricians, and pipefitters swarmed over it like ants on a bone. Dietrich stood on the gantry above and watched. He had not been home in 3 days. His wife brought him sandwiches. His 12-year-old son brought him drawings of spaceships, which Dietrich pinned to the wall of the site office next to the engineering schematics. The drawings were more accurate than the schematics in some ways. The boy understood, in the wordless way that children understand things, that a ship needed to look like it meant to go somewhere. Dietrich looked at the hull. It was ugly. The welds were rough. The plating was mismatched, scavenged from 3 different sources. One section was painted navy blue, another was rust orange, a third was bare metal. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He keyed his radio. "All teams. The hull is sealed. Take 5 minutes. Drink water. Then we start on the engines." A cheer went up. Ragged, exhausted, hoarse. But real. 400 people, standing on scaffolding in the cold Dutch wind, cheering at a metal box. Dietrich allowed himself a smile. Then he checked his watch. 23 days left. He went back to work. Day 8 through day 12 were the hardest. The first flush of adrenaline had burned off. The novelty had faded. What remained was the grind. 14-hour shifts. Blistered hands. Aching backs. The particular exhaustion of people who are not soldiers, not engineers, not builders by trade, but who have decided to be those things because no one else can. In the coordination centers, the arguments flared and died and flared again. Resources were finite. Steel was finite. Fuel was finite. Skilled labor was finite. Every project needed more than existed, and the allocation decisions fell to people who had never made them before. A logistics officer in Brasilia cried in a bathroom stall after denying a shipment of superconductors to a team in Osaka, because the numbers said the superconductors were needed in Rotterdam instead. She cried for 4 minutes. Then she washed her face and went back to her desk. The Koroth watched. They did not understand what they were seeing. Aboard the command vessel's sovereign mandate, Fleet Commander Threkval reviewed the intelligence feeds from the observation drones parked at the edge of Earth's magnetosphere. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had overseen the reduction of 3 species. He understood war. War was a calculation. You assessed the enemy's forces, you matched them against your own, you identified the breaking point, and you applied pressure until the structure collapsed. This was not a structure. This was a flood. "Report," he said. His voice was flat, metallic, the way Koroth voices always were. Emotion was inefficient. His intelligence officer, a younger Koroth named Sreth, pulled up the displays. "Commander, the humans are building vessels. We count 43 orbital frames in various stages of construction. An additional 112 suborbital platforms. Ground-based launch infrastructure is being expanded at a rate of," he paused. "Checked the numbers. Checked them again. At a rate that is not consistent with their industrial capacity." "Explain." "I cannot, Commander. They are exceeding their own capacity. They are building faster than their factories should allow. They are building in places that are not factories. We have detected construction activity in residential zones, agricultural zones, zones that have no industrial designation whatsoever." Threkval stared at the display. 43 frames. They had had 12 ships on day 1. 12. In 7 days, they had quadrupled their fleet. Not by building warships. By building things. Crude, ugly, barely functional things. But things that could fly. Things that could carry weapons. Things that could, in sufficient numbers, be a problem. "Continue monitoring," Threkval said. "Update me every rotation." "Yes, Commander." Threkval turned away from the display. He walked to the viewport. Earth hung in the dark, blue and white and impossibly small. He had a feeling he did not like. The Koroth did not have a word for it. The closest translation would be, the sense that a calculation is about to be proven wrong. He dismissed it. The humans had 22 days. 22 days to build a fleet from nothing, to train crews, to develop tactics, to mount a defense against the Dominion, which had been conquering worlds for 6,000 years. It was not enough. It could not be enough. He told himself this. And then he went back to watching. On day 10, Arjun Venkatesh and Professor Mehta solved the propulsion problem. The solution was not elegant. It was not safe. It was, in the words of Professor Mehta, an act of engineering violence that would make God weep. But it worked. The principle was simple: take a fusion reaction that was theoretically possible but practically suicidal, strap it to a magnetic containment field that was held together by software written in 72 hours of continuous coding, and point the resulting plasma jet in the direction you wanted to go. The engine would run for approximately 4 minutes before the containment field degraded to the point of catastrophic failure. 4 minutes of thrust. Enough to push a hole from Earth orbit to the outer system. Enough to close the distance, fire whatever weapons were on board, and coast home on momentum. "It's a bomb with a nozzle," Professor Mehta said, staring at the prototype. He was 71. His hands shook. His eyes were red from lack of sleep and from something else, something that might have been pride or might have been terror. "We are going to strap bombs to our ships and ride them into battle." "Yes," Arjun said. "And the crews? The crews riding the bombs?" Arjun was quiet for a moment. "The crews will know what they're riding. They will volunteer. They will have 4 minutes of thrust and a lifetime of coasting. And if they aim well, they will not need more than 4 minutes." Professor Mehta nodded slowly. "Who will we tell?" Everyone. We put the design online. Open source. Every lab, every shipyard, every garage with a plasma torch and a prayer. They can build it. They can improve it. They can make it safer if they can figure out how. But the base design goes to everyone. Today. Professor Mehta looked at him. You understand what you are proposing. You are giving the most dangerous engine in human history to the general public. I am giving the general public a chance to not die. Yes. I understand. The design went online at 6 in the evening, day 10. By midnight, it had been downloaded 4 million times. By morning, the first garage-built prototype was being assembled in a shed outside of Perth, Australia. The man building it was a plumber named Gary. He did not fully understand the physics. He understood the plumbing. And the engine, at its core, was plumbing. Very hot, very fast, very dangerous plumbing. But plumbing. Gary welded the injector assembly, stepped back, and wiped his hands. Days 11 through 14 were the days of the weapons. A ship was useless without teeth. And humanity's teeth were, frankly, inadequate. The best missiles on Earth were designed to hit cities, not warships. The best railguns were experimental, underfunded, sitting in labs gathering dust. The nuclear arsenal was substantial but politically radioactive. No one wanted to be the first to suggest strapping warheads to the new fleet. General Okonkwo settled the debate in a single meeting. We will use nuclear weapons, she said. The room went silent. Not as warheads. As shaped charges. Focused. Directed. We are not glassing planets. We are punching holes in holes. The physics is the same. The politics is different. I will take the politics. You give me the physics. No one argued. The weapons programs ran parallel to the shipbuilding. Missile factories in Russia and China and the United States retooled to produce shape-charge warheads. Railgun barrels were machined in German and Japanese and South Korean factories. Laser arrays, crude and power-hungry, were bolted to holes by teams who had never built a weapon in their lives and learned from manuals downloaded off the internet. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. The Koroth Dominion had conquered 400 worlds. Their weapons technology was millennia ahead. Their shields, their armor, their targeting systems, all of it was beyond anything Earth could produce in 30 days. But General Okonkwo had a theory. She shared it with her staff on day 13 in a bunker under the Swiss Alps. We cannot outgun them, she said. We cannot outfly them. We cannot outthink them. They have 6,000 years of warfighting doctrine. We have 30 days of panic-driven engineering. She paused. She let the room sit in that truth. So we do not fight their war. We fight ours. Their doctrine is built around precision. Around superiority. Around controlled, measured, overwhelming force. They expect us to meet them in formation. To engage at range. To fight ship to ship in a line, the way every species they have conquered has fought. We will not do that. She pulled up a holographic display. A swarm of dots, thousands of them, surrounding a single larger shape. We will throw everything at them. Every ship. Every platform. Every missile. Every railgun slug. Every laser pulse. Not in a line. In a cloud. A storm. A million small, fast, ugly things coming from every direction at once. They will shoot down 90% of it. Maybe 95. But the 5% that gets through will hit them in places they do not expect, with weapons they do not recognize, flown by crews they cannot predict, because the crews are not soldiers. They are welders and teachers and plumbers and students, and they will fly like lunatics, because they have no training, no doctrine, no manual. They will fly on instinct and rage and the simple, animal refusal to die. She turned off the display. They have conquered 400 worlds. Every world fought them the way the Koroth expected. We will not fight them the way they expect. We will fight them the way humans fight. Messy. Loud. Stubborn. And absolutely, completely, unreasonably committed. The room was quiet. Then, slowly, the officers began to nod. On day 15, the first ship flew. It was called the Dietrich because the crew insisted, and because Dietrich had argued against the name and lost. It lifted off from the Rotterdam yard on a column of fire that turned the night sky white. The hull shook. The seams groaned. 3 bolts sheared off the port engine mount and clattered across the deck, and a welder named Peter caught one with his bare hand and threw it into a bucket without stopping his work. The ship climbed. It shook. It rattled. It leaked hydraulic fluid from 2 separate joints and the navigation computer crashed twice. But it climbed. It reached orbit. It stayed in orbit. The crew of the Dietrich was 9 people. A former cargo ship captain. 2 Navy officers. 3 aerospace engineers. A mechanic from the Rotterdam yards. A medic. And a 20-year-old communications officer who had been a university student 3 weeks ago and was now responsible for keeping 9 people alive in the vacuum of space. They orbited twice. They tested the engines. They tested the weapons, which were a single railgun bolted to the bow and a cluster of missile tubes that had been pulled from a decommissioned submarine. The railgun fired. The ship shuddered. The target drone, a decommissioned satellite, exploded. The crew cheered. The communications officer cried. The captain, a gray-haired woman named Ingrid, allowed herself a thin smile and said, "All right. That's the gun. Now let's see if we can hit something that shoots back." They came home on day 16. The landing was rough. The heat shield cracked in 2 places. The Dietrich limped back to Rotterdam trailing smoke, and the ground crew caught it in a net of cables and foam, and 400 people who had been working 18-hour shifts for 2 weeks stood in the yard and screamed with joy. Dietrich stood on the gantry. He watched his ship come home. He watched the crew climb out, dirty, exhausted, grinning. His son was beside him, holding his hand, eyes wide. "Papa," the boy said. "It flew." "Yes," Dietrich said. "It flew." "Will it fly again?" Dietrich looked at the hull. The cracked heat shield. The scorched plating. The rough, ugly welds that he had inspected himself, one by one, with his own hands. "Yes," he said. "It will fly again. And it will not fly alone." By day 20, there were 300 ships. They were not a fleet in any traditional sense. They were not uniform. They were not elegant. They were a collection of welded, bolted, riveted, glued, and prayed-over machines that shared only 2 characteristics. They could reach orbit, and they could carry a weapon. Some were large. The Okonkwo, named for the general despite her furious objections, was a converted aircraft carrier, 240 meters long, bristling with missile batteries and railgun turrets. It had been built in 48 hours in a Chinese dry dock by a crew of 3,000 who had not slept more than 4 hours at a stretch. Its hull was patchwork. Its engines were 4 separate designs mated together with adapter plates and optimism. Its command center was a repurposed bridge from a container ship, still smelling of diesel and old coffee. Some were small. The Gary, built in the shed outside Perth, was 12 meters long. It had 1 engine, 1 pilot, and a single nuclear-shaped charge in the nose. Gary had welded it himself. He would fly it himself. He told his wife, "It's like plumbing, love. Just faster and hotter and with a bigger chance of going bang." His wife told him he was an idiot. Then she kissed him and told him to come back. Between the large and the small, there was everything else. Mining rigs with engines strapped to them. Research stations converted to gun platforms. Orbital construction frames loaded with missiles and crewed by people who had been construction workers 2 weeks ago and were now, technically, space infantry. A fleet of tugs from the port of Singapore, each one fitted with a laser array and a prayer. They were ugly. They were dangerous. They were held together by welds and wire and the collective stubbornness of a species that had looked at the void and said, "Not today." On day 22, the crews trained. There was no time for proper training. No time for simulations, for drills, for the slow accumulation of muscle memory and tactical instinct. There was time for 3 things: learn your ship, learn your weapon, learn the plan. The plan was simple. General Okonkwo had drawn it on a whiteboard in the bunker, and she had not bothered to erase it because no one needed to look at it twice. Phase 1, launch everything. Every ship, every platform, every missile. Get them into space. Get them moving. Get them pointed at the incoming fleet. Phase 2, swarm. Do not form up. Do not fly in formation. Scatter. Come at them from every angle. Make them track 1,000 targets at once. Overload their sensors. Overload their targeting. Make them choose, and make every choice cost them. Phase 3, hit hard. Close the distance. Get inside their weapon ranges. Use the railguns, the missiles, the lasers, the nuclear charges. Hit them in the engines. Hit them in the bridges. Hit them in the places that hurt. Do not give them time to adapt. Phase 4, survive. Come home. Any way you can. Limp, coast, drift, pray. But come home. The crews learned the plan. Then they learned their ships. The Dietrich ran drills in orbit, practicing the swarm dispersal, practicing the attack runs. The crews of the smaller ships practiced in simulators cobbled together from flight training software and video game controllers. A group of teenagers in Sao Paulo wrote a targeting program in a weekend and uploaded it to every ship in the fleet. It was not military grade. It was not elegant. It worked. And in the quiet hours, when the drills were done and the engines were cold, the crews sat in their ships and talked. They talked about their lives before. About jobs and families and the small, ordinary things that they might not get to do again. A mechanic from the Okonkwo told his bunkmate about his garden. How he grew tomatoes. How his daughter liked to help him water them. How the tomatoes were just starting to ripen, and he hoped someone would pick them if he didn't come back. His bunkmate, a former schoolteacher, said, "Someone will pick them. And someone will water them. And someone will tell your daughter they're from her father's garden. That's how it works. That's what we do. We take care of each other's gardens." The mechanic nodded. He did not say anything else. He didn't need to. On day 25, the Koroth fleet was detected. It appeared at the edge of the solar system, past the orbit of Neptune. A wall of ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The observation drones counted and lost count and counted again. The number was too large for the human mind to hold easily. It was not a fleet. It was a migration. A moving civilization come to eat another world. General Okonkwo received the report in the bunker. She read it. She set it down. She looked at her staff. How many? She asked. 4,212 confirmed vessels. Additional signatures suggest support craft, transport ships, processing vessels. Total count exceeds 6,000. Okonkwo nodded. She had known it would be large. She had not known it would be this large. 300 ships against 6,000. 20 to 1. She thought about the numbers. She thought about the odds. She thought about the Koroth, who had been doing this for 6,000 years, who had refined their art of conquest into a precision instrument, who had never lost, never been pushed back, never been made to bleed. She thought about Dietrich, standing on a gantry in Rotterdam, watching his ugly ship come home trailing smoke. She thought about Gary, welding an injector assembly in a shed, muttering about plumbing. She thought about Yoon Seo-yeon, walking south from Seoul to Busan, because her daughter was south and that was the direction that mattered. She thought about 8 billion people who had spent 25 days building something out of nothing, who had welded and coded and hauled and argued and cried and refused to lie down. She picked up the phone. She called every ship in the fleet. Every platform. Every station. This is General Okonkwo. The Koroth fleet has been detected. They are 7 days out. I will not lie to you. They outnumber us 20 to 1. They outgun us 100 to 1. They have been fighting wars for longer than our species has had written language. She paused. But they have never fought us. They have never fought a species that builds a fleet in 30 days out of scrap metal and spite. They have never fought a species that looks at impossible odds and says, fine, I'll take the long way. They have never fought 8 billion people who have decided, every single one of them, that they will not be processed. That they will not be archived. That they will not be reduced. She took a breath. You know your ships. You know your weapons. You know the plan. In 7 days, we launch. All of us. Every ship. Every platform. Every missile. We go up, and we go at them, and we make them understand what this planet is. Not a resource. Not a target. Not a line in a conquest ledger. A home. And the people who live here will burn the sky before they let anyone take it. She hung up. In 300 ships, in 300 cockpits and bridges and gun stations, the crews heard the words. And they did not cheer. They did not rally. They simply nodded. They checked their harnesses. They checked their weapons. They checked the seals on their hulls and the fuel in their tanks and the air in their recyclers. And they waited. The Koroth fleet arrived on schedule. Threkval stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Mandate and watched Earth grow in the viewport. Blue. White. Small. The same small thing he had watched 29 days ago when he had dismissed it as a nuisance. Status, he said. Fleet is in formation. 4,212 combat vessels. Processing ships holding at the rear. All weapons charged. Shields at full. Sreth paused. Commander. The humans have launched. Threkval blinked. All four eyes blinked independently, the way they did when he was processing something unexpected. Explain. They're ships. They are launching. All of them. We count 307 vessels in orbit and climbing. Additional platforms are activating in low orbit. Missile silos are opening across the planet's surface. Threkval stared at the display. 300. Against 4,000. He felt the feeling again. The one without a word. The sense that a calculation was about to be proven wrong. They are forming a defensive line, he asked. No, Commander. Sretha's voice had changed. There was something in it. Something the Koroth did not have a word for either. They are not forming. They are scattering. All vectors. All speeds. They are coming at us from every direction simultaneously. Threkval looked at the tactical display. 300 dots, spreading out like a burst of shrapnel, each one on its own heading, its own speed, its own attack vector. No formation. No coordination. No doctrine. They are insane, Threkval said. Yes, Commander. Open fire. All batteries. Target the largest vessels first. Disrupt their command structure. The Koroth fleet fired. 4,000 ships, each one carrying weapons that could crack a moon, opened up on 300 ugly, welded, patchwork hulls. The void lit up. Plasma beams crossed the dark. Missile trails painted white lines across the black. The first human ships died in the opening salvo. The Gary's 12-meter plumbing project, took a plasma bolt amidships and vaporized. Gary did not suffer. The shaped charge in his nose detonated with him, and the flash briefly lit the viewport of a Koroth destroyer 3 kilometers away. But the swarm kept coming. The Koroth targeting systems were designed to track formations, to predict vectors, to anticipate maneuvers based on doctrine and training. They were not designed to track 300 individual ships, each one flying a unique, erratic, human course. Each one jinking and rolling and cutting engines and relighting them in patterns that made no tactical sense. Each one piloted by a person who had never flown a ship before and was flying it on adrenaline and terror and the bone-deep certainty that if they stopped moving, they died. The Koroth gunners fired. They hit. They destroyed. But for every ship they killed, 10 more got closer. And the ones that got closer were inside the Koroth weapon ranges. Inside the envelope where the big guns could not track, where the point defense systems were overwhelmed by the sheer number of incoming targets. The Dietrich came in low and fast, hugging the debris field of a destroyed freighter. Ingrid stood on the bridge, hands gripping the rail, eyes locked on the Koroth destroyer ahead of them. Gunnery, she said. Railgun. Target their engine array. Port side. The big one. Range is closing. 400 meters. 300. 200. Fire. The railgun spoke. A single slug, 200 kilograms of tungsten, accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light. It crossed the distance in a heartbeat. It struck the Koroth destroyer's port engine array and punched through the shielding like a needle through paper. The engine bloomed. The destroyer listed, spinning, trailing fire. Reload, Ingrid said. Next target. The Okonkwo came in from above, 240 meters of ugly, patched-together steel, bristling with weapons. Its missile batteries fired in ripple sequence, 40 missiles, then 40 more, then 40 more. The Koroth point defense systems tracked them, engaged them, destroyed most of them. But some got through. They always got through. And each one that got through hit a hole, or an engine, or a sensor array, and the Koroth fleet bled. Small wounds. Pinpricks. But pinpricks, in sufficient number, become something else. Threkval watched his fleet take damage. Small damage. Manageable damage. The kind of damage he had inflicted 1,000 times on 1,000 conquered worlds. The kind of damage that was supposed to break the enemy's will. But the enemy did not break. The human ships kept coming. They took hits. They lost hull plates, engines, weapon systems. They vented atmosphere. They lost crew. And they kept coming. Not because they were brave. Not because they were trained. But because they had decided, each one, every single one, that they would not stop. That they would fly their ugly, welded, leaking ships into the teeth of the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and they would hit something, even if it was only a scratch, even if it was only a dent, even if they died doing it. A Koroth cruiser took a nuclear-shaped charge to the bridge. The charge had been fired from a converted mining rig, piloted by a woman who had been an accountant in Winnipeg 3 weeks ago. The charge punched through the cruiser's forward shields and detonated inside the command deck. The cruiser went dark. It drifted. It did not explode. It simply stopped. Threkval watched it die. He watched the mining rig spin away, venting atmosphere, tumbling. The pilot was gone. He knew this. He also knew, in a way he could not articulate, that she had known. That she had known the mining rig would not survive the shot. That she had fired it anyway. "Commander," Sreth said. "We have lost 14 vessels. 37 are damaged. The human fleet is down to 212 ships, but they are inside our formation. They are engaging at point-blank range. Our targeting systems are saturated." "Adapt," Threkval said. "Shift to close-range defense. Deploy the fighter screen." "Commander." "The fighters are engaging. But the humans are not fighting the fighters. They are ignoring them. They are flying through the fighter screen, taking damage, ignoring it, and going for the capital ships." Threkval was silent. In 6,000 years of Dominion warfare, no species had ever ignored the fighter screen. The fighter screen was the doctrine. You engaged the fighters, you cleared the screen, you advanced. That was how it worked. That was how every species had fought the Koroth, and that was how every species had lost. The humans were not fighting the doctrine. They were flying through it. Taking the hits. Burning through the screen like meteors through atmosphere. And on the other side of the screen, the capital ships were exposed. "Commander," Sreth said. His voice was different now. Quieter. "We are losing ships. Not many. But we are losing them. And the humans are not slowing down. They are accelerating." Threkval looked at the tactical display. 212 dots, swarming through the Koroth formation, hitting and running, hitting and dying, hitting and burning. Each one a small, ugly, impossible thing. Each one crewed by people who had no right to be here, no training, no doctrine, no reason to be winning. And they were winning. Not decisively. Not overwhelmingly. But they were winning in the way that mattered. They were making the Koroth bleed. They were making the Koroth afraid. Threkval felt it. The feeling without a word. The one he had felt on day one, watching the small blue planet in the viewport. The sense that a calculation was about to be proven wrong. It had been proven wrong. "Cease fire," he said. Sreth stared at him. Commander? Cease fire. All batteries. All ships. Cease fire. The order went out. The Koroth guns fell silent. The plasma beams died. The missile launches stopped. The void went quiet, except for the drift of wreckage and the slow tumble of broken ships. The human fleet did not stop. They kept coming. They kept firing. They did not know why the Koroth had stopped shooting, and they did not care. They had a job to do, and they were doing it. Open a channel, Threkval said. All human frequencies. All of them. The channel opened. Threkval looked into the camera. He saw, on the other end, a bridge. A human bridge, cramped and ugly, smelling of sweat and burnt wiring. A woman stood at the center, hands gripping the rail, face streaked with soot and blood. Ingrid. Captain of the Dietrich. This is Fleet Commander Threkval of the Koroth Dominion, he said. His voice was flat. Metallic. But there was something under it now. Something new. I am ordering my fleet to stand down. I am requesting a cessation of hostilities. I am requesting terms. Ingrid stared at him. Blood ran from a cut above her eye. She did not wipe it. You're surrendering, she said. It was not a question. I am acknowledging that this engagement is no longer sustainable. My fleet has suffered losses I did not anticipate. My doctrine has been rendered ineffective. My intelligence assessment was incorrect. You thought we'd roll over. I thought you would fight as others have fought. You did not. No, Ingrid said. We didn't. Silence. The void turned slowly around them. Wreckage drifted. Somewhere in the dark, a human ship was still firing, not yet aware of the ceasefire. A Koroth destroyer listed, dead in space, its crew gone. I will send an envoy, Threkval said. I will discuss terms. I will withdraw my fleet beyond your system's boundary. These are my concessions. And the processing? Ingrid said. The archiving? The reduction? Threkval was quiet for a moment. Those terms are withdrawn. They will not be applied. Not to this world. Not to your species. Ingrid nodded. Slowly. As if she was checking the weight of the words, making sure they were real. Then we'll talk, she said. But Commander? Yes. Don't come back. Threkval looked at her. For eyes, square and flat and alien. He looked at the blood on her face. At the soot on her uniform. At the hands gripping the rail, knuckles white, steadying herself against the deck of a ship that was held together with bad welds and stubbornness. No, he said. I will not come back. The channel closed. The silence after the battle was not quiet. It was loud. It was the sound of 300 crews breathing. Of engines winding down. Of hulls creaking as they cooled. Of people calling out names, checking on friends, counting the living. The Dietrich drifted in orbit, trailing debris. Half its railgun was gone. The hull was scored with plasma burns. 2 compartments were vented, sealed by emergency bulkheads. The crew was alive. All 9 of them. Battered, bleeding, exhausted. But alive. Ingrid stood on the bridge. She let go of the rail. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the viewport. Earth hung below, blue and white, scarred by launch trails and debris fields, but whole. Still there. Still turning. The communications officer, the 20-year-old student, looked at her. Captain. What do we do now? Ingrid thought about it. She thought about the 30 days. About the garages and the shipyards and the basements. About Dietrich on his gantry. About Gary in his shed. About Arjun and his whiteboard. About Seo Yun walking south. About 8 billion people who had picked up hammers and torches and keyboards and said no. She thought about the Koroth, who had come to process a species and found, instead, a species that processed them. "We go home," she said. The Dietrich turned. Its engines fired, weak and sputtering, burning the last of their fuel. It began the long, slow descent toward the blue world below. All around it, the other ships turned too. 211 holes, battered, burned, leaking, beautiful. They came down through the atmosphere in streaks of fire, trailing smoke and sparks, and the people on the ground looked up and saw them coming. Not a fleet. Not an armada. A collection. 112 acts of stubbornness, welded together by people who had refused to die. They landed. In Rotterdam, in Houston, in Ulsan, in Newcastle, in 100 other places. They landed hard. They landed ugly. Some of them broke apart on touchdown and the crews crawled out of the wreckage, coughing, laughing, crying. Some of them landed smooth, gentle, as if the ships themselves were tired and wanted to rest. The crews climbed out. They stood on the ground. They felt gravity. Real gravity, not the spin cycle approximation of orbital stations. They felt the wind. The sun. The smell of dirt and salt and cut grass. They stood there, in the dirt, in the sun, and they breathed. 6 months later, the Treaty of Second Chances was signed. It was signed in Geneva, in the same hall where Kwame Asante had stood and asked 193 countries to become one species. The Koroth sent an envoy. Not Threkval. He had been recalled, reassigned, quietly removed from command. The Koroth did not discuss what happened to commanders who lost. But the envoy he sent was respectful. Careful. The envoy looked at the humans the way you look at a fire you did not know was still burning. The treaty was simple. Earth would not be processed. Earth would not be archived. Earth would not be reduced. Earth would be left alone. And in exchange, Earth would not pursue the Koroth. Would not seek revenge. Would not build a fleet of conquest and go looking for the Dominion's homeworld. General Okonkwo signed for Earth. She signed with a pen, on paper, the old way. When the Koroth envoy asked why, she said, because paper is honest. You can't hack it. You can't edit it. You sign it, it's done. That's how we do things. The envoy signed. The treaty was filed. The Koroth fleet withdrew beyond the orbit of Pluto and did not come back. Dietrich went home. He walked into his house in Rotterdam at 9 in the morning on a Wednesday. His wife was in the kitchen. His son was at the kitchen table, doing homework. The boy looked up. His eyes went wide. He ran. He hit Dietrich at full speed, wrapped around his legs, and did not let go. Dietrich stood in his kitchen. He smelled like hydraulic fluid and burnt metal. His hands were still stained with grease. His back ached. His knees ached. Everything ached. His wife looked at him. She did not cry. She had done her crying 3 weeks ago, in the long nights when she did not know if he was alive. She just looked at him, and then she crossed the kitchen, and she put her arms around him, and she held on. "You're late," she said. "I know," he said. The landing was rough. "Dinner's in an hour. Wash up." He washed up. He sat at the table. His son showed him his homework. It was mathematics. Fractions. Dietrich helped him with the fractions, and the boy's pencil scratched on the paper, and the kitchen smelled like onions, and the window was open, and the wind came in, and the world was small and ordinary and exactly as it should be. In Madras, Arjun Venkatesh published his paper. It was not classified. It was not restricted. He published it the way he had published the engine design, open, free, available to everyone. The paper was titled, On the Application of Controlled Fusion Detonation to Short-Duration Propulsion, with notes on containment field stability and the acceptable margins of engineering violence. Professor Mehta co-authored it. He was listed second. He insisted. I am 71, he said. I have earned the right to be second. The paper was downloaded 9 million times in the first week. 3 of the downloads were from Korath academic servers. Arjun did not block them. He figured they could learn something about plumbing. In Seoul, Yoon Seo-yeon went back to teaching. She taught mathematics. Fractions, mostly. And algebra. And sometimes, when the class was quiet and the afternoon light came through the windows, she told them about the 30 days. Not the ships. Not the weapons. Not the battle. She told them about the walking. About the 400 kilometers from Seoul to Busan, and how her feet had bled, and how strangers had stopped their cars and offered her rides, and how she had walked anyway, because her daughter was south. The children listened. They always listened. And then they went back to their fractions, and the afternoon light moved across the floor, and the world turned. In a shed outside Perth, Gary's wife planted tomatoes in the spot where the shed had been. The shed was gone. The Gary was gone. Gary was gone, vaporized in the opening salvo, his shaped charge lighting up the dark like a small, defiant star. His wife planted tomatoes. She watered them every morning. She talked to them. She told them about Gary. About his plumbing. About his welding. About the way he had looked at the injector assembly and said, "Right, let's see if the bloody thing works." The tomatoes grew. They ripened in the sun, red and heavy on the vine. She picked them. She ate them. They tasted like summer. They tasted like dirt and water and patience. They tasted like enough. On the first anniversary, they built a memorial. Not a grand one. Not a monument of stone and bronze. They built it in orbit, on the frame of the Dietrich, which was too damaged to fly and too loved to scrap. They left it there, drifting, a hull of mismatched plating and rough welds, turning slowly in the sunlight. They put a plaque on it. The plaque was small. It was made of steel, because steel was what they had used to build everything else. The words were simple. Here lies the fleet that should not have existed. Built in 30 days by people who were told they would die. They disagreed. They built. They flew. They came home. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were welders and teachers and plumbers and students and mothers and fathers and children. They were human. And that was enough. That was always enough. The plaque turned in the sunlight. The earth turned below it, blue and white and whole. And in the dark, beyond the orbit of Pluto, the stars were quiet, and the Korath did not come back, and the void kept its distance, and the small, stubborn, impossible world kept turning. Because it was home. And the people who lived there had made that very, very clear. The END.